Are you considering doing a PhD in a technical subject? It's a big commitment. It will take several years of your life, and I'm sure you have many questions about it. So why don't you join our little chat? Welcome to Frank Staiano Explains. I'm a professor in the Department of Computer Science and Computer Technology at the University of Cambridge, and I've been chatting with 5 of my undergraduate students from Trinity College, answering the questions they had about doing a PhD. This is the concluding video in this 5-part mini-series. If you've missed any of the other episodes, then click up there to start with the first one. If you have any more questions about doing a PhD that we haven't answered, ask them below in the comments.
Well, it just so happened that pretty much all of my last questions was answered in this one, but I guess I'll...
Alright, well, you may still ask something else, or you may...
Well, so that's the same,
pass
just
if you
a bit modified, hopefully capture something new.
Okay.
When you start and you make your first proposal and you say you're interested, how specific do you have to be with what your topic will be? How flexible is it going to be immediately afterwards and throughout? I guess, how much work do you put into finding your subject matter before applying, during the first year, whose purpose is to find out more? And yeah, how specific do you have to be and how flexible is it afterwards?
So, yes, as you say, I think I've addressed most of this in the answer I just gave, but also in the answer I gave to you in the previous round. So, if you're really unsure what you want to do, then my personal advice would be wait until you are a bit more sure about something that you really want to do. It is still possible to change. It's possible to change after the PhD. It's possible to change halfway through during the PhD. If you're really unsure, there's no reason to want to have, the hat on the seat about going from undergraduate to PhD straight away. If you're not sure what to do, maybe you could consider saying, well, I have these 2 things that I both like, or maybe these 3 things, or maybe I don't really know. Let me just work in the field for a while and see if I actually like it before committing to doing a PhD. If you do go into the PhD, then you have to do, for this statement, enough looking around, enough of a due diligence on why the thing you want to do would be considered a good idea by anyone. I want to solve this problem. So first of all, why? If you solve this problem, who would care? There are some problems that have not been solved because nobody gives a shit about them. Okay, so you could try to do a PhD on that topic, but if nobody gives a shit, including no potential supervisor gives a shit, then nobody's going to admit you as a PhD student on that. Because who would want to be the person who has solved this completely irrelevant problem? So someone besides you has to be excited about that problem, enough that they want to work on it with you for 3 years. And then you have to be interested enough in that problem that ideally that you would want to carry through. Okay, you still seem to have already thought that you might want to change your mind. Okay, well, in that case, you still have to be at least sufficiently interested that you've surveyed the field to the extent that you see why other people haven't been able to solve that problem. If it's interesting, you claim it's interesting, then why haven't other people solved it? Is there some kind of structural wall that they bumped into? Why are you not going to bump into the same wall? You have to give some reason why it's plausible to say that if you tackle this problem that the best known people, including paper X, Y, Z, have tackled but have not solved, why you are going to solve it. What do you think is different in your case? Is it just a matter that computers today are faster? That doesn't look like it would be a sufficiently significant intellectual breakthrough to give you a PhD if all you've done is just thrown faster computers at the same problem that people couldn't solve before. So you have to have some intuition about why this problem that has not been solved could perhaps be solved by you. And you have to show that you are aware of what other people have tried in that field. And yeah, that requires some amount of homework. And you could do that homework in the 3 or 4 different fields you're interested in. And if you see that in some of them it's really too boring to do the homework, then maybe that's one way of putting a cross on one of them and say, actually, I much enjoyed when I did that type of literature survey in field C than when I did in field A. So let's just forget about field A. I'm not going to even think about applying for PhD in field A. I think field C suits me more. And that just the process of writing a sensible application helps you clarify your own ideas. I mean, I made you do homework for coming here today. And you're not going to be graded on this homework, or you're not going to get any other benefit than just I wanted you to start thinking about it. And maybe after, and we haven't even talked about the second part of your thing, we're just talking about the first part. And we are not going to talk about the second part anyway. It's just for you to get started, priming the pump on the fact that you're going to have to think of a problem. You're going to have to justify why this problem is interesting. Who benefits if you solve this problem? Nobody solved this problem yet. If you did solve it, who would benefit? Is it just of help to you as personal satisfaction? Would it help, I don't know, you and your family? Would it help anybody who works in your field? Would it help the whole population of the world? Would it, I don't know, would it solve climate change? I don't know. But you have to explain why it matters. Why is your problem a problem that matters? And if it matters, why hasn't anybody solved it before? And if nobody solved it before, why do you think you can make some progress? Maybe not solving it in a global sense, but at least making an incremental improvement over what already exists. And that kind of stuff, if it's written up in a sensible way, say, well, this guy's still 20 years old, but they got something under that skull that we can do something with.
I guess ideally, when you're going into it, you should come with a specific question or problem in mind. Say, this is what I'm interested in, as opposed to saying, okay, I want to do something theoretical. Great, that's too vague. Okay, I want something kind of for sake of argument. I know AI. Okay, it's great. That's still too vague. You go down until you get something niche enough that just you're comfortable enough saying, I know what this is about, and I know what my contribution might be in this field. Is that like a right way to think about it?
I think that I want to do some work in X is pointless, kind of. I want to work in artificial intelligence. And I'm not saying artificial intelligence because artificial intelligence. Any topic where you just say, I want to work in security. No, that's rubbish. The thing that you need to do is to identify a problem to be solved. I mean, this statement can be arbitrary. There's no rules, there's no limits. You can write anything you want. If you look at it from the perspective of someone who reads a bunch of these statements and it's usually boring, which are the ones that are not boring and that make me want to interact with that person and maybe have them as my student? They are the ones where some problem is identified, which is exciting because I know that nobody's solved this problem yet. And that guy is exciting because he shows that he has read about what the other people have tried in that direction. And so it's not, I want to work in artificial intelligence. Well, what even security? Okay, let's just be politically correct. I want to work in security. At least that guy's read, has identified what are the important papers in that particular field. I want to work in security, narrow it down. I want to work on authentication. What are the major contributions that people have made in the past 50 years about authentication? Well, I know this, and I've read, and I know what's missing from this, and this. And what I want to do is something else that hasn't really been addressed yet, because we're talking, the Internet of Things and this and that. This thing didn't exist 30 years ago, now they exist, but still has been unaddressed for the past 20 years. And I want to blah, 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 and my contribution, blah, blah, and the difference will make, and now I can see someone who's looking into something to do with some concrete purpose. I mean, it can be as theoretical as you want. It can be something that, only whiteboards are involved and no other stuff. But, there's this problem, this conjecture from blah, blah. And the only ways it's been approached is this, and this. But I think that, if you start applying this transform and this other thing and so on, I could make an inroad into approaching it from an algebraic viewpoint and blah, blah. So be a bit more specific about where you're going to have a contribution and why having this contribution would do any good to humanity in some general sense.
Because for my 3 problems that I came up with, somewhat intentionally, they are increasingly more open-ended, but also the subject matters are less specific to actually say, this is something I can do, more so than this is a goal, these are the approaches that we've done. But it's not exactly clear, I want to do this, but I have an idea, I want to poke around more.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have to also look at all the possible people who could be your PhD supervisor. And not everybody looks like me, right? Not everybody is driven to the type of thing that I'm driven to. And there may be people who might like to explore other things which are much less well defined and might be happy with something fluffy, provided that you have some other aspect of your statement that shows that you're the type of person they would like to work with. There may be people who might be they might be willing to take a gamble on someone at the PhD submission stage on something that's much less defined than what I consider usually a useful starting point. And they think, well, provided these other indications are in there, then I can think I could do some exploratory work with that person because they've shown this spark, right? And I'm telling you, to some extent, I mean, I'm trying to be more general than just me, but I'm giving you my perspective, and I'm an engineer, I'm not a mathematician, so and there may be different ways of viewing what a good PhD student is, depending on who views. Okay, so I think I'm sufficiently unbiased in the answers I've given you, that they are much more general than just what I would select. But I'm aware that no single person can represent all the possible viewpoints of what would be fun to do. So there may be other people who look for other indicators of brilliance in a statement. But surely nobody is going to be satisfied or excited about a bland statement that says, I want to work in topic X, because the fact that you want to work in topic X doesn't give me any clue that you're going to be fun to work with or are going to be doing interesting things. So you should give me hints that it's going to be worth working with you.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, I feel like my questions has been partly answered. Well,
we've been speaking for a couple of hours, so
yeah. So I would like to know more about like difference between PhD programs in the UK and in the US. So you mentioned previously that the programs in the US, they have taught courses, but are there any other differences or in terms of teaching style and things you will do during a program, like between those two places?
Well, I've only done a PhD here, and I've only given PhDs here, so I'm very fluent with this style of PhD, and less so with the one in the US. The people in the US tend to have an expectation that the thing will take a lot longer than here.
Yes.
Not least because they have this first couple of years of taught courses and so on. So be prepared if you go there for an expectation that the whole PhD will take a lot longer than here. And then take into account the so-called Hofstadter's law, which is it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. So maybe if you do the PhD here, it will in practice take as long as you thought the PhD over there would take, and if you do it over there, it will take even longer. But that's a kind of a joke. That's just putting it in an amusing way. I think that people of your caliber should all aim, if you want to do a PhD, should all aim to do a PhD in one of the top universities in the world, and any that you choose will be a worthy place to do it if you find the right supervisor that you click with, both at the intellectual content level and at a personal level, as we said in some of the questions in the first round. But then the funding style is also different, I think. In the US, you're basically going to do some work. I don't want to talk too much about stuff where I don't have first-hand experience because I may get it wrong. But I get the feeling that most PhD students in the US end up working as so-called teaching assistants for some part of their PhD. And they, we don't really have that role in here. It would not be the same as doing supervisions in Cambridge. It would be more like, assisting in the class in some way or other. And you get officially paid for that, but there's an expectation that you spend some time on that, as well as doing these taught courses, as well as doing the research, and that obviously all that lengthens the time that you have to invest in that. I mean, spending a long time in the university environment as a PhD student, if you can afford it, I mean, in terms of your life, you may already be married with someone who's fed up that you're spending 10 years as a PhD student instead of being a real person. Besides all these things, if you can afford the luxury of being a student for such a long time, then of course you are exposed to that environment for a longer time, and so you absorb more things and so on. I personally think it is somewhat unproductive to be in the system for many, many years. I mean, I valued the fact that I was in circumstances where I had strong incentives to finish in 3 years, and I did finish in 3 years, and people finishing 4 years also have the benefits, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, really diminishing returns. You could do much more interesting things with your years after the first few. And while it is true that you keep absorbing more and so on, I don't think it's worth the investment. Also because we are in a field like computer science where things change at a rapid pace. We are not talking about, Greek history or something where things have been the same for centuries. Here, if you wait 10 years, the stuff that you were doing in your first year is already obsolete anyway. You have to throw everything away. So you basically, it's not like you accumulate more stuff. You have to start throwing away the earlier stuff. And so you basically restart from zero after a while. So I really don't think it's worth spending a very long time on doing a PhD because basically the knowledge in the world is immense. The possible things you could do is just so much that you're just a small thing with a finite brain, and you can know almost nothing about everything, or you can know almost everything about nothing, right? And the PhD is knowing almost everything about nothing. And that nothing, which is a very narrow thing, and at the end of your PhD you're going to be 1 or 3 people in the world who know the most about it, is something where, first of all, most of the rest of the world doesn't give a shit about it. And second, even those who do, it keeps changing. So after a while, that thing has faded into oblivion anyway. So you shouldn't forget that you are becoming an expert in a field that is so narrow that it's bordering on becoming irrelevant for the rest of the world. And the more time passes, also the less relevant it becomes. So commit to the PhD, do it as seriously as you can, make an advance in the field, but realize that it's not the end of the world, it's not the apex of your career, it's just a starting point. After that, the interesting thing starts. And if you're going to do something like this, you're going to work on P equals NP, that's going to be what you do from then until after you retire. It's not going to be something you do in your PhD. And so the PhD is just, the entry card that you get for saying, well, this guy has survived this particular trial by fire, and he can do this type of stuff where we throw new problems at him and he doesn't walk away because the answer is not at the end of the textbook. So, okay, that's the kind of person we want in this team for doing this kind of thing. Now, let's do the interesting stuff. So, at some point, be prepared to walk away from PhD, draw a line under it. Okay, I've done it, I finished, I write 200 pages about it, bound it, okay, there's 5 copies of this thing, nobody's going to read them anyway. But now I get on with my life and I do interesting stuff. That's how you should do the PhD. Not, okay, and this big monument has to be perfect and so on and so on. No, because nobody cares. I mean, who cares about what I did in my PhD? I managed to write a book about it afterwards, and so some people have read the book. Even the book, now 20 years later, is completely irrelevant. I mean, who buys my book? It's just too old, right? So, and that's, except life is like that. That's how it's going to work. So just take it as one stepping stone in your career. You go to do the PhD in the US, good luck to you, that's fine. Find the best place that's the best match for your interest, where there are specialists in that thing, where the person that you want to work with, and so on and so on. Just do the PhD and get out. Then do the interesting stuff. Don't go and then say, well, okay, yeah, and then spend 10 years. I think 10 years is really a crime against the rest of your life. It's a waste of resources. I mean, if you're here, you're brilliant, and 10 years of a person like that wasted in a PhD, I think it should be outlawed. It's a very formative stage, the PhD, and formative means it shapes you, it trains you to be something else, and the something else is the thing that's going to do the brilliant stuff. And so leave yourself more time for doing the brilliant stuff. Don't waste too much of your youth and enthusiasm on something that is just a preparation stage. The PhD is still just a preparation stage. So yeah, if you go to the US, be prepared that it might take 1.5 to 2 times longer than here. Don't make it take any longer than that. Is this an answer to what you asked?
Yeah, it answers my question.
Okay, good. So this is a bit longer than I thought it would be. It's 12:10. So I mean, maybe just about 2 hours with the fact that I started this. I think it's not a good idea to go for a third round.
Yeah, also I think the thing is out of power.
Yeah, okay.
The
So
light has gone dark.
that's the microphone. Yeah, okay. At least the camera is powered by the wire. I hope that some of this technology worked. I hope that the session was to some extent helpful for you. As you think about these things, as you think about the things that we haven't discussed, more ideas will come into your mind and so on. We can always have more discussions while you're still here with me as your boss. I think it's a fantastic thing to do a PhD. It's a period of great freedom. It's a period of great creativity, and it teaches you a lot of things. It's maybe the first time that you write something as long as a few hundred pages. And for someone like me who always wanted to write a book, I mean, I'd written other books that had nothing to do with computing, but a book about what was going to be my professional interest. I was glad that the PhD put me on that track, and certainly it helps your scientific career to be able to learn to express yourself in a way that you can communicate to others. So none of us is a native English speaker, but English is, or maybe you are. Well, you look too Chinese for me to. Okay, so it's important to be fluent in English as a scientist in this world context nowadays. Maybe things will change in 50 years or whatever, but at the moment, if you want to have an impact on the world, you have to say it in English, and you have to be able to write in English and say it in English at conferences in a way that gets into other people's brains. And if you just write something that gets archived into some journal paper or something like that, but nobody reads it, then it's not so useful. You have to actually persuade people that what you did was worth paying attention to. And that's a big part of this training of the PhD. Of course, the core is actually having the ideas and pursuing them and making them work. And the next important thing is communicating them. All right. So happy to talk more about it in the future, but I hope that this gives you something to think about at least over the summer.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our 2 hours of questions and answers about the PhD degree. I hope you found something useful to you in all that. If so, it would be great if you please left your thumbs up on this video and the other ones in this series. And thank you very much to those of you who are actually doing that. For more on this topic, you might like this very long video on how to get a PhD in computer science and why, and this very short one on how to become a PhD descendant of Galileo Galilei and Isaac Newton. Like, subscribe and all that, and post any further questions in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching, and best wishes for your own PhD in due course.